Chapter 1, The Robbery. Jamal J. Richardson wasn't thinking about dying over shoes. He was thinking about how clean they looked under the corner store's neon sign, white as new paper, the kind that makes you want to write a better story. He had saved all summer for them, stacking cases at the bodega, sweeping hair at Mr. Lou's barbershop, wiping tables at the soul food spot on Saturdays. Everyone knew the grind was for ball, but the first thing he bought wasn't a training program or a private coach. It was the Jordans. Not because he thought shoes made him a hooper, because sometimes a kid from a cracked block needs to see proof on his feet that good things can actually happen. The bell over the store door jingled as he stepped out into night air. November cold slipped under his hoodie, but his heartbeat kept him warm. He tugged at the laces one more time, double-knotted, smiled at his reflection in the dark window, and stuffed the receipt deep in his pocket like a certificate. He was 17. He was careful. He was 3 blocks from home. The street was mostly quiet. A bus coughed at the corner and rumbled away. A stray cat ghosted across the sidewalk. Light leaked from porches and the ever-flicker of the broken street lamp. Jay's phone buzzed. His mother, Denise, you good? He typed 3 minutes and hit send. She was on that nurse's aide grind, a double shift, but still checked him like he was 5. Jay didn't mind. It felt like somebody keeping a hand on his shoulder. He cut down Greeley, the shortcut that shaved a minute off the walk if you ignored the way shadows pooled in the alley. He wasn't stupid, he kept his hood up, his head down, his pace even. He didn't flex or post. No bag, no box, just shoes on feet and a boy trying to get home. Yo, a voice called from behind. Footsteps quickened. Hold up. He didn't. You don't hold up on Greeley at night for a voice you don't know. Yo, Jay. He slowed because the voice knew his name, and turning your back on a voice that knows your name is different. He turned just enough to check. 2 figures in hoodies, black on shadow, hands tucked in pockets but tense in that way hands get when they're learning trouble. He recognized them, Malik and Trig, neighborhood boys he'd shot around with at the park. Not friends, not enemies, just orbiters in the same gravity. What's good? Jay said, neutral. Malik's eyes dropped to the shoes. Those new? Jay half smiled. Something like that. Trig stepped closer. His laugh was light, but his shoulders weren't. They clean. Jay nodded and shifted his weight. The block was suddenly loud in the wrong places and quiet where it shouldn't be. Somewhere, a TV yelled a game score. Somewhere else, a couple argued. Greeley held its breath. We've been looking for those, Malik said. It wasn't a compliment. Jay's stomach tightened. He forced his face to stay bored. You should hit the mall then. Nah, Trig said. He shook his head like he was sorry about the weather. We gon' hit you. Jay took a step back. Come on, man, he said, and the man was not respect so much as a plea to a better version of them. We hoop together. You know me. That why I know you'll hand them over, Malik said. Jay's mind flickered through options the way ball moves through hands on a fast break. Run? Dumb. Fight too? Dumber. Give them up? Pride screamed no, but pride doesn't pay our bills. He measured how far the nearest porch was, whether lights would mean witnesses, whether his mother would rather him barefoot than bleeding. Look, Jay said, voice steady, I'll give you cash. Not much, but... Not cash, Trig said. Shoes. And then the night folded in on itself. Trig's hand came out of his pocket not empty but metal, a dull black curve that ate light. Gun. It was small and sloppy in his grip, the kind of gun a boy borrows to become a man for 5 minutes. It made everything else shrink. Jay's breath left his body like someone opened a valve. He lifted his hands slow, palms out, eyes on the gun the way you watch a pot that might boil over. Aight, he said. Aight. Chill. I'ma take them off. Just chill. The laces were suddenly knots made of nerves. His fingers fumbled. He crouched to pull the first shoe loose, and in that motion, he saw himself from above, a kid on concrete, bowing to a weapon, praying the ground would be softer than the impact. Shame flushed his face hot, then cold. He swallowed it because living was more important than pride. Faster, Malik hissed, eyes darting up and down the block. I'm trying, Jay said, and he was, but his fingers wouldn't listen. The lace finally gave, and he tugged the shoe off. He could feel the grit on the sidewalk through his sock. He reached for the other lace. What you got in your pockets? Trigg said. Nothing, Jay lied, thinking of the receipt and the 3 crumpled singles. He didn't reach for them. Fast hands look like threat. Fast words do, too. He kept both slow. Check him, Malik said. Trigg shifted, the gun moved an inch, the street lamp popped and hummed, and in that tiny chorus of movement, something snapped, not in Jay, but in the fragile control holding their fear together. Trigg flinched. The gun sneezed fire. The sound was wrong, both louder and smaller than the movies. It punched the night and left a ringing space. Jay didn't know he'd been hit until warmth spread across his thigh and the sidewalk rose to meet him. He spilled onto concrete, an ugly, human stain blooming through denim. He tried to pull air back into his chest and found it had turned to sand. Yo! Malik shouted, voice cracking. Why you? Panic scattered his words like leaves. Trigg's hands shook. He moved, bro. Let's go. Let's, and then they were running, shoes slapping, curses trailing after them like tails. Jay's world shrank to a red heat in his leg and a white cold in his fingers. He pressed both hands to the wound like he could hold his blood inside with prayer and pressure alone. His phone buzzed against his hip, his mother again, or maybe an alarm, or God. He couldn't reach it. The block exhaled. A door opened. Mr. Reeves from the building on the corner stepped onto his porch, old eyes finding the shape of a boy on the ground. Lord have mercy, he said to the air, then louder, boy. You hear me? Jay blinked, tried to say yes, only coughed a wordless sound. Mr. Reeves's shout turned the block into a lighthouse. Lights clicked on. Neighbors leaned over railings. Somewhere, sirens considered waking up. A woman called 911 with the specific urgency of someone who had done it before. 17. Shot in the leg. He's breathing. Hurry. Jay stared up at the slice of sky grilly aloud. It was bruised purple, scratched with wires and the suggestion of stars the city never let you see. He thought about the first time he had held a basketball and believed it could hold him back. He thought about his mother's hands and the way they always smelled like cocoa butter and alcohol pads. He thought about the shoes, still clean on one foot, missing from the other, and felt something inside him break, not bone, but the part that believed he could outrun the rules of this place. He didn't pray. Not yet. He didn't curse, either. He just put his teeth into the inside of his cheek and tried to stay present. Stay here. Stay alive. He counted breaths. He counted porch lights. He counted the seconds between siren and arrival and promised himself that if he stood up again, he would walk different. He didn't know what that meant. Only that blood on concrete writes its own commandments. The ambulance rounded the corner in a blur of noise and brightness. Hands found him, gloved, certain. A voice asked his name. Another pressed gauze hard enough to make the world white out and return. A strap crossed his chest, a mask covered his mouth. Jamal, he managed. Jamal, I got you, a paramedic said, eyes level with his. Stay with me. He did. Because even on Greeley, with blood like a shadow under him, with one shoe off and one shoe on, the story wasn't over. Chapter 1 Visual, one image only. Hyper-realistic 1280 by 720, African-American teen Jamal J. Richardson, 17, brown skin, slim build, short fade, gray hoodie, brand new white Jordans, on a cracked city sidewalk at night, one shoe half removed, eyes wide. Two African-American teens, hoodies up, stand in front of him, one holds a small handgun, muzzle smoke faint. Red neon from a corner store sign and a flickering street lamp cast harsh light. African-American neighbors peek from porches in the background. Chapter 2, Blood on Concrete. The siren's first wail seemed far away, like a sound from another city. Jamal J. Richardson stared at the slice of sky between the power lines and tried to keep the edges of the world from folding in. Everything pulsed, streetlight hum, neon flicker, the ache that roared out from his thigh and back again like a tide made of fire. "Stay with me, boy," Mr. Reeves called from his porch. The old man moved faster than Jay thought possible, house shoes slapping wood, phone tucked to his ear. "They on the way. You hear me?" Eyes open. Jay blinked hard. The concrete under his shoulders felt like ice. He could smell wet iron, his blood, and the ghost of something sweet from the corner store trash can, orange soda, stale candy. A door slammed. Voices stacked. Curtains twitched. Greeley Street knew how to spectate pain. It was a skill learned young. A woman crouched near Jay's feet, braids pulled back beneath a satin scarf. "Baby, don't look at it," she said, voice steady. She took off her hoodie and wadded it tight against the hole in his jeans. "Press here." He tried, hands shaking. Warmth spilled through his fingers anyway. Lights strobed the block blue-white-red as the ambulance carved into the curb. 2 EMTs spilled out, African-American man with a close-cut beard, African-American woman with her hair in a tight bun, both already gloved, already moving. "Jamal," the bearded EMT said, sliding to his knees. "I'm Carter. This is Price. We got you." Jay tried to nod. The motion made the edges of the sky blur. "Gunshot, right thigh," Price said, scanning. "Entry lateral midshaft. No exit. Pulse rapid, breathing shallow." Carter cut the fabric clean. Cold air slapped raw skin. Jay hissed. I know," Carter murmured. "Stay with me." "What's your last name?" "Richardson," Jay managed, the word catching on the mask of pain that kept wanting to climb his face. "Any allergies? Meds?" He shook his head. Price looped a blood pressure cuff around Jay's arm. The Velcro soft rip sounded too loud. "Pressure's dropping. Let's pack and move." "Copy." Carter pulled gauze, thick white that felt like snow pressed into summer. "On 3, he warned. 1, 2, he pressed. The world flashed white like lightning trapped in bones. Jay gasped. He heard someone curse softly, maybe himself. "Good," Carter said. "That's good. You're doing it." Price lit up a saline bag, the plastic slapping against her forearm as she primed the line. "For in," she called, voice like a metronome for the chaos. A police cruiser nosed up behind the ambulance. 2 officers stepped out, postures taut, eyes scanning shadows, radios chattering. The younger one hovered near the EMTs. "He talking?" "He's answering," Carter said without looking up. "He's a kid." "Description on shooters?" the officer asked Jay. "Later," Price said, glancing up sharp. "He's bleeding." The officer swallowed his question and backed up a step, chastened by a tone that did not require a badge to carry authority. A stretch of seconds snapped into focus, straps buckling across Jay's chest, the stretcher's legs clacking as it collapsed, the ambulance doors yawning open like a mouth. The bearded EMT climbed in beside him, still pressing gauze. Price followed, slamming the latch. Greeley Street shrank to a sliver through the back window. The siren screamed again. Inside, everything became a small room of light and metal. The floor hummed. Price tapped his arm. "You with us, Jamal?" "Yeah." "Good." "Squeeze my hand." He did. Harder. He did again. "That's it." "Call his guardian," Carter said over the engine's growl. Price had the number already, Mr. Reeves had given it. She hit speaker, and the phone rang through Jay's chest like a bell. "Hello?" Denise's voice, thin, frayed, trying to be strong. "Ms. Richardson? This is EMT Price with Metro Fire. Your son Jamal's been injured. We're transporting. I'm on my way, Denise said, voice cracking and hardening in the same breath. Which hospital? The ambulance swallowed the rest as they hit the corner, and the world tilted. Jay stared at the ambulance ceiling. He tried to remember a verse, a phrase from those Sundays when his mother dragged him to church, anything to hang his mind on. All he found was a loop of the moment the gun sneezed and the way the sound seemed too big for such a small weapon. He squeezed his eyes shut to push the loop away. It stayed. Open, Carter said gently. Keep him open. He leaned into Jay's field of vision, beard line sharp, eyes steady. Look right here. You a hooper? Jay blinked. Yeah. What position? Guard. Good. I'm gonna need you to run the play with me. Breathe on my count. Carter began, slow and even, in. 2. 3. Out. 2. 3. Jay matched as best he could. The pain didn't leave, but the edges stopped snarling. They hit a bump. The gurney bounced. Carter's elbow never left the pressure point on Jay's thigh. You got a number, kid? Carter asked. On your back? Jersey? 3, Jay said. Sometimes 5. 3, sometimes 5, Carter repeated like a mantra. We're running a 3 to 5. In 2, out 2. The hospital swallowed them in fluorescent light and clicking wheels and the cold smell of promise. A nurse took over pushing. Someone else rattled off numbers. A door whipped open and Jay caught a flicker of himself reflected in a metal cabinet, boy on a bed, one shoe off, one shoe on, lips gray, eyes trying to stay here. Denise burst through a security line with that unstoppable mother energy that breaks rules on reflex. Scrubs wrinkled. Hair pulled back. Fear like a second skin. That's my son. Ma, Jay tried. The word turned to air as a nurse blocked Denise with both hands. We got him, she said, not unkind. We got him. Denise's eyes found Jay's and locked. Even across a moving gap, even through hands and protocol, she pinned him to now. Mama's here, she said, voice shaking like a bridge that would not fall. I see you. The ER swallowed him deeper. A doctor gloved up in motion. GSW, right thigh, somebody recited. No exit, distal pulse present. Pre-hospital packing. Draw type and cross, the doctor said. Let's get imaging. And somebody, please, let Mom know he's stable enough for CT. Stable. The word hit Jay like cool water. Jamal, the doctor said, eyes focusing like a camera. I'm Dr. Bell. We're going to take care of you. I need you to tell me if anything besides your leg hurts. Just, leg, Jay said. Good. Rate the pain 1 to 10. Jay wanted to say 11, he said 8. Pride, even here. Copy, Dr. Bell said, already busy. We're going to give you something for it. Denise's voice rose in the hall, then quieted, then rose again as someone explained scans and consent and the way hospital time moves like syrup over ice. She wasn't praying out loud, yet, but the room felt filled with words anyway. Jay could feel them pressing through walls like heat through old radiators. They wheeled him to imaging. The machine's mouth gaped circular and white. A tech with gentle hands guided the gurney so nothing bumped. You're doing fine, she murmured. You're brave. The scan hummed a sterile lullaby. Jay stared at the ceiling and pictured the cracked hoop on his block. The way the ball looked against twilight. The drill he'd been running for months, 1 dribble, 2 steps, pull up. His leg twitched as if memory alone could make it run. When the scan spit him back out, Dr. Bell was waiting. Good news first, he said, eyes landing on Jay before the chart. The bullet didn't hit bone. It lodged in soft tissue. That's painful, but it's fixable. We'll get you to surgery to retrieve it. You got me? Jay swallowed. Yeah. Bad news? Dr. Bell added, not avoiding reality. There's risk in everything we do. Bleeding. Infection. Rehab hurts. But you're here. And you're lucky. Inches matter. Inches. The word fell heavy. He thought of a ball kissing rim and dropping through. He thought of a bullet kissing bone and deciding not to. He thought of Trig's hands and Malik's eyes and the sound the night made when it swallowed them. They pushed him back toward the ER bay. Denise stood waiting with a nurse's hand still on her shoulder like a gate that agreed to open. She stepped in close, one palm on his forehead, the other finding his hand. He squeezed back as if her grip could anchor him to the bed, to the moment, to the version of himself that hadn't bled on a sidewalk. "You hear what the doctor said?" she asked, tears clinging to her lower lashes. "Inches," Jay whispered. "Inches," she echoed, and in that single word was rage and relief and a promise she'd cash later with heaven. A transport team appeared at his side. "OR's ready," someone said. The bed moved. The lights above ticked past, panel, 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 like seconds he could count. At the door, he looked at his mother. "Ma?" "I'm right here," Denise said. "I'm not moving." The doors swung open. Cold air met his face like the start of a new half. Jay took a breath, then another, and let the white swallow him, not like a sheet pulling over, but like a tunnel with light at the end he could actually reach. The world narrowed to beep and metal and the oxygen cool against his mouth. Before the sleep took him, a picture flashed in his mind uninvited, one shoe on, one shoe off, and a future where both feet found ground with purpose. He didn't know if God drew that picture. He only knew it felt better than the last one. The lights dimmed. The verse he couldn't remember hovered just out of reach like a shot at the buzzer. He closed his eyes and aimed anyway. Chapter 3, Mama's Prayer. Denise Richardson ran like she was chasing time itself. Her scrub top was wrinkled from a double shift, her shoes sticky from floors she'd mopped at the nursing home, but her legs carried her faster than she thought they could. She had parked crooked in the ER lot, door half shut, purse swinging against her side. None of that mattered. Her baby was inside. The sliding doors whooshed open and swallowed her. The smell hit her first, antiseptic, bleach, metal. A nurse at the desk raised her head. "Can I help you?" "My son." Denise blurted. "Jamal Richardson." They brought him in. Gunshot. "Where is he?" The nurse's eyes flicked to the screen, then softened. "He's in surgery prep. They're taking care of him." She reached for paperwork. "Ma'am, if you could." Denise slapped her ID on the counter. "I don't need no clipboard. I need my boy." The nurse hesitated, then nodded toward a side hallway. "Security will take you closer. Please, follow protocol." Protocol. Denise had lived her life by other people's protocols, check-in times, overtime schedules, bills stacked in order of who screamed the loudest. But tonight, her protocol was prayer. Security ushered her to a waiting alcove outside the surgical wing. The walls were beige, the chairs plastic. A vending machine buzzed like a fly. Denise dropped into a seat and pressed both hands together so tight her knuckles whitened. "Lord," she whispered, head bowed. "Don't take my baby. Please, God. Not Jamal." Her voice rose without permission. "I worked doubles to keep him out of trouble. I raised him right, I did everything I could, God. Don't let it end like this." The guard shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to hear. Another mother in the room began to cry softly into her hoodie. Denise didn't care. She rocked forward and back, words tumbling raw. "You said you'd never leave us nor forsake us. Well, we need you now. Cover his blood. Cover his mind. Cover his legs. Let him walk again, Lord. Let him live." She remembered Jamal at 7 years old, sitting cross-legged on their living room rug, coloring a picture of sneakers in crayon. "When I get big, I'ma buy you some too, Mama," he'd said proudly. She had laughed, kissed his forehead, and told him she didn't need no shoes, just him standing strong. A door opened down the hall. A nurse in green scrubs stepped out, mask pulled under her chin. Denise jumped up so fast the chair scraped the tile. "Mrs. Richardson?" "He's stable for surgery. The bullet missed the bone. We need to remove it and clean the tissue, but he's young and strong." Denise's knees almost buckled. Relief and fear braided together like rope. "Can I see him?" "Briefly." "He's sedated." They led her to a bay lined with monitors. Jamal lay there, oxygen mask over his face, fur taped to his arm, his leg wrapped thick. His skin was pale under the harsh light, lips cracked, but his chest rose and fell, steady as a tide. Denise leaned over him. "Baby, Mama's here," she whispered, brushing sweat from his forehead. "You hear me? You fight. You got too much in you to let this take you out." She pressed her lips to his temple. She smelled antiseptic and childhood sweat all at once. She closed her eyes and prayed again, softer now but deeper, like a current under the surface. "God, I give him to you. I can't fight this battle. The doctors got their tools, but you got the final say. Bring him back to me." The chaplain from earlier stepped into the bay quietly. Denise glanced up, tears streaking her cheeks. He nodded once, holding a small Bible. "Can I stand with you, ma'am?" She nodded. They stood together, her hand on Jamal's, his hand on the good book, both holding the same thread of hope. Minutes later, the surgical team wheeled Jamal through double doors. Denise stood rooted, watching until the doors closed, leaving only the echo of squeaking wheels. Back in the waiting room, Denise sank to her knees on the tile. She didn't care who looked. She lifted her hands high. "Devil, you ain't taking my son. Not tonight. He belongs to God." Her voice cracked, but her spirit didn't. Every syllable carried the weight of a woman who had lost too much already: husband, sleep, peace, but refused to lose her child. The vending machine buzzed. The guard coughed. Somewhere in another room, a monitor beeped. Denise stayed on her knees, hands lifted, until her arms trembled from fatigue. She whispered one last line: "Lord, I'll take the night shift for the rest of my life, just let him see the morning." Chapter 4, Inches from Death. The operating room was a world of steel and light. Overhead lamps threw down a white so bright it erased the idea of shadows. Machines beeped in rhythm, sterile and sure. Jamal J. Richardson lay at the center, motionless except for the rise and fall of his chest under the ventilator mask. 16-year-old male, Dr. Bell announced, voice calm as if reading a weather report. "GSW to right thigh, no bone involvement. Let's retrieve the round and minimize tissue trauma." Gloved hands moved like a choir, each member playing their part without missing a beat. Suction hissed. Instruments clinked against metal trays. Nurses passed gauze like lifelines. Jay's body was sedated, but his mind wasn't all the way gone. Somewhere in the haze, he drifted in and out of dark water. He could hear muffled echoes, his mama's voice, firm as ever: "Don't take my baby." The chaplain's calm tone: "You were spared for a reason." The snap of a net in the park, the squeak of sneakers, the thud of a basketball against his palm. Then a blast of light, like headlights in fog, jolted him back toward the surface. "Retractor," Dr. Bell said. A nurse placed the tool in his hand without hesitation. He leaned in. There it is. Lodged in soft tissue. No vascular hit. Inches away from femoral artery. He shook his head slightly. He's lucky. Lucky. That word rang around the sterile room, bouncing off tile, hanging over Jay's body like a banner. Inches separated him from a funeral his mother would never recover from. Inches stood between him and the end of every dream he ever had. Extraction complete, Dr. Bell said after a long breath. He dropped the small, bloodied slug into a dish with a metallic plink. To anyone else, it was just evidence. To Jay, it was an unwanted souvenir of death's near miss. They irrigated, sutured, wrapped. The beeping steadied. The ventilator sighed. Life kept its grip. Back in the waiting room, Denise sat on the edge of her chair, hands twisted tight in her lap. She counted every second on the wall clock, each tick dragging like weight. When Dr. Bell finally entered, peeling off his cap and mask, she shot to her feet. "Tell me." Her voice cracked but didn't break. "He made it through surgery," Dr. Bell said. "The bullet missed the artery by less than an inch. If it had shifted, even slightly, we'd be having a different conversation. But your boy's alive. He'll need rehab. He'll have scars. But he's here." Denise covered her face with both hands and sobbed, knees almost giving. Relief poured through her body like water through a drought. The chaplain stepped forward, steadying her elbow. "Thank you, Lord," Denise breathed. "Thank you, Lord." Dr. Bell continued gently, "He's still sedated. You can see him soon." Denise nodded, tears slipping past her fingers. "That's all I need." Hours later, Jay surfaced from anesthesia in a dim recovery room. His throat felt raw, his leg heavy and wrapped like it belonged to someone else. Beeping monitors hovered at his side, for lines tangled like vines. He blinked against the blur until shapes sharpened into familiar outlines. His mother sat in the chair beside his bed, chin resting on her chest, eyes closed but hands still gripping his. She hadn't let go even in sleep. Jay croaked, "Ma." Her eyes flew open. Relief flooded her face in an instant. "Baby," she whispered, leaning close, kissing his forehead. "You scared me half to death." Jay tried to smile but winced instead. "It hurt." "I know," she said, brushing hair from his damp brow. "But you here. You here." The chaplain entered quietly, nodding at Denise. "How you feeling, son?" Jay licked his cracked lips. "Like somebody tried to take me out." The chaplain smiled faintly. "And didn't." He set a small Bible on the bedside table. "You were inches away, Jamal. Inches from death. Don't ignore what God spared you from." Jay stared at the book, then at his mother's tear-streaked face, then back at the ceiling. He didn't answer, but the weight of those inches pressed heavier than the bandages on his leg. Night crept into the hospital, machines humming like lullabies. Denise dozed again, hands still in his. Jay lay awake, eyes locked on the ceiling tiles. His mind replayed the moment, the gun, the sound, the fire in his leg. Every time the memory reached its climax, he felt himself slipping back to that sidewalk, bleeding under the streetlight. But every time, he also remembered Carter's steady eyes, the chaplain's words, and Dr. Bell's "He's lucky. Lucky. Blessed. Inches." Words that clung to him as tightly as his mother's hand. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, almost afraid to hear it out loud, "Why me?" The silence didn't answer. Not yet. But something deep inside him stirred, a small spark in the middle of exhaustion and pain. Maybe he didn't know the answer, but he was alive enough to ask the question. And maybe that was the point. Chapter 5, Flashbacks of the Court. The first sound Jamal J. Richardson remembered loving wasn't music. It was the slap of a basketball against cracked blacktop, that hollow, rubber thunder rhythm that made even a tired block feel alive. In the recovery room's quiet glow, morphine tugging soft at the edges of pain, Jay drifted in and out of sleep and let the court replay like a film he knew by heart. He was 10 again, small for his age, bones all elbows, socks sliding down and shoes that squeaked because the soles were slick, not new. The park sat wedged between two brick buildings whose windows blinked TV blue at night. Chain-link fence stitched the court to the neighborhood, a bent rim hung like a shrug over a scuffed backboard tattooed with chalk names and curse words. The paint had peeled away years ago, but somebody, probably Mr. Reeves, spray-painted a new free-throw line so the kids could argue about something official. "Keep your elbow in, little man," Coach Vern would say, voice like gravel and sunshine. He wasn't a real coach, not paid, anyway. He was a city bus driver with a whistle and a soft spot for strays. Elbow in. Follow through. That's your signature. Jay would nod and bend his knees and watch the net, not the ball, like the older kids taught him. The shot would go up, sometimes it kissed the rim, sometimes it didn't touch a thing but hope. When it dropped clean, that net would whisper SHHH, and for a second it felt like the whole block hushed to listen. He remembered how the court taught him math before school did, layups by twos, makes in sets of tens, suicide sprints that counted down backwards to zero because zero meant you didn't owe anyone anymore. He learned reading there, too, body language, tells, who cut left when they lied about going right. The court was a school whose tests graded you in sweat. Sundays after church, his mother would let him stop for 15 minutes, 15 that always became 40. Denise would sit on the bench with her scrubs still creased from a shift, sneakers untied, purse wedged at her hip. She'd tell him last one, then another last one, then sigh and laugh and let the sun have him for a little longer. She knew the court was a kind of sanctuary where nobody whispered about bills and nobody asked where his father was. Here, you were only as good as your next cut. When he turned 12, Jay learned that shoes were both nothing and everything. He played fine in whatever he had. The game didn't care what your feet wore if your heart was loud, but he couldn't help noticing the way heads turned when somebody walked in with brand new heat. It wasn't greed. It was gravity. New meant possible. Possible meant maybe me. He started hustling honest, stacking soda flats at the bodega, sweeping hair at Mr. Lou's, pushing a busted mower across patchy front yards for $5 and a sandwich. He stacked bills in a jar under his bed and counted them the way he counted made shots, slow, out loud, like the numbers themselves were magic. Denise found the jar once and left a 20 on top with a note, "For your dream, Mama." He kept the note pinned behind his door. The first time an older kid shoved him hard on a drive, Jay hit the ground, palms skin raw, eyes hot. He wanted to swing. Coach's whistle cracked the air. "You good?" Vern called. "Yeah." "Then get up. Ball don't cry." Jay stood. Something changed that day, a small hinge turned inside him. He learned to take impact and keep moving. The court taught a gospel of resilience long before he could spell the word. As he grew, so did the expectation hanging on his shoulders like a weighted vest. The same boys who cheered his handles would be the ones to test his pride after twilight, when the court emptied and the block remembered its other rules. It was a delicate choreography: keep your head down, keep your chest up, keep your mouth measured. Jay got good at that dance. Not invisible, just uninteresting enough to slip past trouble. Then came the summer when everything felt suddenly expensive: the rent, the groceries, even patience. Denise doubled shifts. Jay tutored kids at the rec center for a stipend that barely bought bus fare. He still hooped, always hooped, but now every shot seemed to arc with a question: will this take me out or take me through? The day he finally bought the Jordans, he didn't tell anybody. He walked into the store quiet, picked them up like relics, paid in cash that smelled like grease and grass, and laced them on slow. He expected trumpets, fireworks, angels. All he got was a mirror and a kid whose shoulders straightened because something he touched with his hands had met the picture in his head. He walked to the court, took 3 shots in a row from the elbow, and left before anyone asked to try them on. He wanted to keep the feeling for himself a while. Back in the hospital, the beeping brought him forward. He blinked, the present sharpening around the edges. His leg throbbed, a heavy drum hidden under blankets. He stared at the ceiling tile grid and let the flashbacks keep stitching him together: coach's laugh, the net's whisper, the echo of a ball finding the deep part of the rim. Why did shoes matter so much? Because the court mattered. Because the court was the only place the rules stayed the same: 10 feet high, 15 feet from the line, 28 feet long, when everything else changed without asking permission. He remembered the first time he played under real lights, a middle school tournament at the YMCA with a scoreboard that shouted numbers in red. He was scared until the tip. After that, it was all muscle memory and breath. They lost by 5. He went home angry at his misses and lay in bed practicing release in the dark, hand flicking a phantom ball toward a ceiling that didn't care. He remembered the sound of his mother's keys in the door, the sigh she would let out before she smiled at him and asked, "How many you hit today?" He'd answer bold if the shots fell, humble if they didn't. She'd ruffle his hair and say, Okay. Hit more tomorrow. Eat. He remembered Malik and Trig back when they were just kids with chipped teeth and dirty knees, taking turns pretending the busted rim was Madison Square Garden. He tried to find the exact turn when boys who shared a ball became boys who shared a gun. He couldn't. The shift had happened in the space between bell rings and darkness, one bad choice slotted into another until a path appeared under their feet and they mistook it for a road. Jay swallowed hard. The memory of the gun's cough flashed again, too small for the damage it tried to make. He pressed his head back into the pillow and exhaled slow, like Coach taught him before a free throw, breath first, then release. The hospital room beeped its approval. Denise stirred in the chair. You awake, baby? Yeah. You resting at all? A little. She stood and stretched, her joints popping confession. She smoothed his blanket as if neatness could heal. You remember when you was 5, dribbling in that kitchen, hitting the trash can for your buzzer beater? She chuckled, the sound warm enough to cancel half the night. You knocked over my whole pot of rice with that game winner. Jay smiled, a real one that tugged against the tape on his cheek. We ate cereal for dinner. And you said that was a victory meal. Denise's eyes glossed. She touched his forehead. Court made you strong, Jamal. But God's gone make you whole. He didn't argue. Not because he suddenly knew how to believe the way she did, but because the sentence landed somewhere true. The court had given him muscles and mind, something else would have to give him meaning. Maybe the inches Dr. Bell talked about weren't just in his leg. Maybe they were in the space between who he had been and who he could be now. He closed his eyes and saw the hoop against twilight. He lifted his shooting hand a few inches off the sheet and held the follow-through, index finger down, wrist soft, like Coach would want. In his mind, the ball spun true, cut air, and whispered the net quiet. The shot didn't fix anything. But it reminded him he still had a form to return to, a rhythm still inside him, waiting. Outside the window, dawn uncoupled itself from night, a thin gray line along the city's edge. Jay watched it grow and thought, not of shoes, but of steps, one, then another, back to wherever purpose lived. Chapter 6, The Chaplain's Visit. Morning came dressed in hospital gray. Jamal J. Richardson watched light crawl up the wall and stall against the TV bracket like it wasn't sure if it should keep going. His leg throbbed in a slow circle under the blankets. The pain meds blurred the edges but didn't erase the center. Denise sat by the window with a foam cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. She scrolled through her phone, text messages stacking up from cousins, church mothers, even Mr. Lou from the barbershop. Every few minutes she looked over at Jay the way people check a stove, making sure nothing was burning. A soft knock tapped the door. A man stepped in wearing a black shirt with a white clergy collar and an ID badge clipped to his belt. Dark skin, close-cropped hair gone gray at the edges, smile lines set like parentheses. Morning, he said. I'm Chaplain Avery. May I come in? Denise stood, smoothing her scrubs like the room had suddenly become a sanctuary. Yes, sir. You the one from last night? That was my colleague, he said. He told me about your son. Wanted me to check on him after surgery. Jay shifted on the pillow. I'm good, he lied. Chaplain Avery's eyes were kind but not soft. Pain has a way of arguing with that sentence, he said, pulling a chair closer to the bed. How you holding up, for real? Jay shrugged, careful. I'm here. That's a start. The chaplain glanced at Denise. Mama, you eat? She dipped her head like a teenager caught skipping class. Later. Now, he said gently. There's a cafeteria tray with your name on it. I'll sit with him. She hesitated, eyes flicking to Jay. I'm good, Ma. Go, Jay said. Get the eggs that taste like foam. She gave the chaplain a grateful smile and slipped out. Avery turned back to Jay and rested his forearms on his knees. Mind if I ask what happened, your version? Jay stared at the ceiling a beat, as if the story lived up there and not inside him. I was coming home. 2 dudes I knew from the block ran up. wanted the shoes. One pulled a piece. I tried to give him up. He flinched. Gun went off. He stopped. The rest was already in the room. You knew them, Avery said. Used to hoop with them, Jay said, jaw tightening. Before they changed. Or before the world finished changing them, Avery said, letting the words sit. Jay swallowed. Same difference. The chaplain nodded, letting that truth stand without decorating it. You know what Dr. Bell told your mama? Inches. Bullet missed the artery by less than an inch. He held up his thumb and forefinger, the space between them a thin sliver of mercy. Life and death are neighbors, Jamal. Sometimes a breath apart. Jay's eyes went to his wrapped leg. The word hung there again, inches, like a sign he couldn't ignore. You play? Avery asked, chin tipping at the gym bag in the corner Denise had brought from home. Yeah. Guard. I figured, the chaplain said. Got that look in your shoulders, ready to move before the whistle. He leaned back, thoughtful. You know what great guards do? They see the floor. Angles. Timing. The difference between a turnover and an assist is often an inch in a second. Jay smirked despite himself. Coach Vern says the same. Game of inches and breath. Coach Vern sounds like a wise man. Bus driver with a whistle, Jay said. He's still wise. Avery's eyes warmed. So here's what I'm wondering. He tapped the air once with a finger, not a point but a nudge. If inches and seconds matter on the court, what you gonna do with the inches you got back out here? Jay didn't answer right away. He traced the square of tape on the back of his hand where the 4 pierced skin. I don't know, he said finally. That's honest, Avery said. But I don't think I don't know is the end of the sentence. It's just the comma. He glanced at the bedside table. You read? Jay followed his eyes to the small Bible the other chaplain had left. I tried when I couldn't sleep, kept seeing the moment over and over. What did you see when you opened the book? Avery asked. I didn't, Jay admitted. I shut it. Avery nodded like he'd expected that answer. He didn't reach for the Bible. He didn't preach. He just asked, you ever heard of Joseph? The coat guy? Jay said. The coat guy, Avery chuckled. His brothers did him dirty, jealousy will make you sell your own blood. He got thrown in a pit, then a prison. Years later, he told them, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Jay's cheek twitched. What good is a bullet? The bullet ain't good, Avery said, voice firm. What God can do around it is. He opened his hands as if weighing 2 realities. One reality, boys with a gun for 5 minutes of manhood. Another reality, you still breathing. Another, kids on your block watching how you heal. Which reality are you gonna feed? Jay looked away, toward the window. Outside, a tree scratched the glass with winter fingers. I'm supposed to be mad, he said quietly. At them. At the block. At shoes. I am mad. But then I remember Carter in the ambulance counting my breaths like I had a game to win. And my mom's face above me in prep. And that doctor saying inch. He swallowed. It's like the anger got a twin now. Anger brings energy, Avery said. Purpose gives it direction. Jay let that settle. The monitor beeped in time with something other than fear. Footsteps whispered in the hall. A face popped around the door, Mr. Reeves, hat in hand. I can come back if. Come on in, Avery said. We need bench players too. Mr. Reeves' eyes were glassy. He shuffled to the bed. Boy, you scared the whole block, he said, voice rough with love. I told your mama, this street wasn't gone right your end. Jay smiled thin. Thank you for calling it in. Wasn't me, Reeves said. Was the Lord making my ears work? He looked at the chaplain with curiosity. You the one brought the book? My colleague did, Avery said. Reeves nodded. Good. Book still works. Denise returned balancing 2 styrofoam containers and a tiny army of condiments. She relaxed a notch seeing the room full. For 10 minutes the talk turned ordinary: eggs that tasted like a napkin, the nurse with jokes, Reeves' rumor that Coach Vern wanted to stop by. Ordinary felt like medicine too. After the food detour, Avery stood. "I'll let you rest," he said to Jay. "But before I go, I want to give you something." He didn't hand over a verse. Instead, he pulled a small notepad from his pocket and tore off a page. He drew a skinny rectangle, marked a dot near the edge, then wrote one word under it: inches. He set it on the tray. "Put that where you can see it," he said. "Every time you look at it, remember 2 things. You didn't die, and you didn't live just to go back to the same." Jay picked up the paper. It was simple, almost stupid. But his throat tightened around it anyway. Avery turned to Denise. "Mama, church is praying," he said. "We'll send meals. And I know a rehab PT who loves basketball. I'll connect you." Denise's eyes glossed. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Avery said, smiling. "Thank me when he's running suicides again." He reached for Jay's shoulder, squeezed once, firm, fatherly, and then stepped back. At the door he paused. "One last thing. Purpose doesn't wait until you got no limp. Sometimes it starts with one." The door clicked behind him. Jay lay back, the paper between his fingers. He thought about the boys he used to hoop with, the ones who might still be crossing Greeley in the wrong direction. He thought about the cracked court, coach's whistle, kids watching from the fence. He thought about how close his life came to being a mural with candles on the sidewalk and a t-shirt with his face on it. He set the paper upright against the cup of water so the rectangle stared back at him like a tiny court. Inches. He could almost hear Coach again, elbow in. Breath. Release. His leg throbbed. Somewhere deep inside that ache, a new rhythm was learning how to count. Chapter 7, The Long Rehab. Physical therapy didn't smell like hospitals. It smelled like rubber mats, sweat, and determination. The first morning they wheeled Jamal J. Richardson into the rehab gym. Sunlight poured through tall windows and fell across rows of parallel bars, resistance bands looped like bright snakes, and medicine balls stacked like planets. Denise pushed the wheelchair until the brakes clicked. "You ready?" she asked. Jay stared at the bars, then at his leg, wrapped, sore, suspicious of every movement. "Ready as I'm gonna be." A tall woman with braids down her back and a name badge that read PT, M. Harris approached with a grin that was equal parts warmth and drill sergeant. "Jamal? I'm Ms. Harris. If you do what I say, you'll hate me for 2 weeks and thank me forever. Deal?" Jay smirked. "We'll see." "We will," she said, winking at Denise. "Let's start with the boring stuff that saves your life, breathing. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Pain makes you hold your breath. Holding your breath makes pain worse. We don't chase that spiral." Denise mouthed to Jay, "Told you, breath." They transferred him to a mat. Ms. Harris palpated gently around the surgical site, checking swelling, the angry purple and yellow blush winding across his thigh like a map of a place he didn't want to visit again. "Range of motion, day 1, she said. "Tiny bends. No hero stuff. Heroes follow instructions." He tried to bend. A firecracker went off inside the muscle. His hands clawed the mat. "Good," she said, completely unbothered by his grimace. "That's your muscle waking up. Say hello, then tell it who's boss." He bent again, millimeters. The ceiling tiles became countable. Sweat beaded at his hairline. Across the room, a kid in a football hoodie grunted through shoulder rotations. An older woman lifted her knee an inch and wept, then tried again. Rehab didn't care how old you were, everybody started where they were. "Okay," Ms. Harris said after a few sets. "Transfer to the bars." Denise rolled the wheelchair closer and braced it. Ms. Harris and an aide flanked Jay. "On 3. 1, 2, stand." Jay pushed through his palms. The leg screamed. The room swam. He found the bar, gripped tight, forehead touching cold steel. His breath sawed. "Eyes up," Miss Harris said. "Don't worship the floor." He lifted his head an inch. The mirror in front of him showed a kid who looked both older and younger than 17, eyes too tired, jaw too set, a sheen of effort across his face. "We walk," she said. He moved his good leg first. The injured leg dragged a little, unsure. He picked it up, half an inch, placed it, felt the weight shift like a building learning a new foundation. Again. They made it 3 bars down and back. His shirt was soaked. His hands shook. His thigh felt like a fist that refused to open. When he collapsed into the wheelchair, Denise slid a towel behind his neck and fanned his face with a church program she'd stuffed in her bag out of habit. "That's my boy," she whispered. "Every inch." On the way out, a familiar laugh bounced off the gym walls. Coach Vern lumbered in wearing his bus driver uniform and a whistle like always, as if the gym was just another route. "Who told y'all could start the party without me?" "Coach," Jay said, surprised into a smile that softened his whole face. Vern tapped the parallel bars. "You been on these, huh? Fancy. When I was a kid, therapy was 2 cousins yelling at you to jump a fence." He leaned down, voice serious beneath the jokes. "Proud of you." "You came before your shift?" Denise asked. "During," he said, unapologetic. "Route got a detour today." He clapped his hands once. "All right. Homework, toe taps, quad sets, ankle pumps. And faith." "Faith ain't a PT exercise," Jay said. "It is," Coach replied. "We just don't bill insurance for it." They all laughed, small, necessary. Days found a rhythm. Morning PT, afternoon napping between nurse vitals, evenings with Denise reading texts from church friends who insisted on dropping off casseroles they couldn't afford and juice Jay didn't like but drank anyway because love was the main ingredient. Chaplain Avery dropped by twice a week with fewer words and more questions. Sometimes he didn't talk at all, he just sat in the chair and matched his breathing to Jay's when pain tried to boss the room. The paper with inches moved with Jay, taped to the bedside rail, propped on the lunch tray, finally tucked under the edge of the mirror on the rehab floor so it looked like a sideline sign at a game only he could see. Progress was measured in weird victories. The day he bent his knee to 90 degrees, Ms. Harris high-fived him like he'd hit a buzzer beater. The first time he showered without help, Denise cried joy she pretended was steam in her eyes. When he took 10 steps without the walker, Coach Vern blew his whistle so loud a nurse popped her head into giggle, technical foul. But there were bad days too. The ones where the scar felt like a zipper made of fire. The ones where sleep came in broken pieces and nightmares flashed, gun, streetlight, the sound that didn't sound like the movies. On those mornings, Jay snapped at people who didn't deserve it, including his mother. He apologized, then apologized for apologizing. "Pain makes you weird," Ms. Harris said, not unkind. "Don't make it your personality." One afternoon, after a miserable session where his leg felt like it had forgotten the idea of forward, Jay rolled to the window and stared at a pickup game on the hospital courtyard hoop. 2 nurses in scrubs, a janitor in a green polo, a teenager visiting his granddad. The ball made the same hollow music it always did. A janitor banked in a shot and strutted shamelessly. Jay's chest ached worse than his leg. Chaplain Avery found him there, face tilted to the glass like a plant seeking light. "Run that play in your head," Avery said. "Elbow in. Breath. Release." "I can't run it out there," Jay said, nodding at the court. "Not yet," Avery said. "But you can practice purpose while you wait." "Which is what?" "Cheering for the next man," Avery said simply. "When you can't shoot, you can still clap." It sounded corny. It also sounded right. Jay cupped his hands against the glass and yelled, "Corner." The janitor heard, swung the ball, and the teenager splashed it. They all looked up and pointed at Jay like he'd drawn the play. Something knotted in his chest. That evening, Miss Harris rolled on a low stool and set a rubber band loop on the floor. Time to earn your keep, she said. Ankle band work. 10 out, 10 in. Jay groaned and did them. After the second set, he asked, Ms. Harris, you hoop? Played in college, she said, without brag. Point guard. Figures, he said. Bossy. She grinned. Vision. I see where you're going before you do. Where am I going? She pointed to the parallel bars. Today, there and back twice. Tomorrow, 3 times. Next week, you'll say I'm crazy, then do it anyway. She paused, softer. A year from now, you'll be telling some kid on your block why he's worth more than what's on his feet. Jay looked at her, then at the paper on the mirror, inches, then back at the bars. Deal. They stood him up. Bar. Step. Breath. Step. On the 4th pass, his leg shook so hard he thought it would fold. Ms. Harris slid 2 fingers under his elbow, barely a touch, just enough. Don't worship the floor, she said. He lifted his eyes and caught himself in the mirror. He didn't look like a victim. He looked like a kid becoming a man the long way. When he finally sat, Denise pressed a cold bottle of water into his palm and kissed his cheek with that quick, efficient love that mothers learn when time is stingy. You did that, she said. I did that, he echoed, surprised to hear pride in his own mouth. Not the kind that buys shoes. The kind that takes steps. That night, he texted Coach Vern a grainy video of the 2-bar walk. Coach texted back 3 words, inches and breath. Then another, proud. Jay set the phone down, leaned his head back, and let the ceiling blur. The court lived in his muscles even if his feet weren't on it. The rhythm was still his. The game hadn't left him, it had moved inside for a while. Outside the windows, the sky gave up its blue for a deepening purple. Streetlights flickered awake. Somewhere not far, a siren wailed and faded. Jay's hand found the paper on the tray and folded the edge down like a bookmark on a story he intended to keep reading. Tomorrow would hurt. He'd show up anyway. Chapter 8, Back on the Court. Spring arrived the way it always does in the city, quiet at first, then suddenly loud with birds and bikes and kids claiming sidewalks like they paid rent. Jamal J. Richardson followed Ms. Harris out of the clinic with a limp that was more memory than injury. The brace had shrunk to a thin sleeve. The scar, a lightning bolt on his thigh, flashed when the wind tugged his shorts. Denise walked beside him carrying a bag that held water, ice packs, and a mother's entire emergency plan. Touch and go, Ms. Harris reminded. No hero ball. If pain talks, you listen. I hear you, Jay said, though adrenaline was already singing harmony. They turned the corner and the court unfurled, chain-link fence rattling in a breeze, bent rim still bending, chalk ghosts on the backboard spelling names of boys who thought writing on brick made them permanent. A few younger kids shot around in slides, shirts too big, dreams exact-sized. On the bench, Mr. Reeves held court with a paper bag of sunflower seeds. Coach Vern leaned on the fence post like it was his office door. You took your time, Coach called. We've been waiting on the star. Jay swallowed. This square of cracked blacktop had been in his dreams every night, both the good ones and the ones with sirens. The closer he got, the louder all those nights felt. Denise squeezed his shoulder. You don't owe the court nothing, she said quietly. You don't owe me nothing, either. Just do what your body says and what God says. Jay nodded. He stepped through the gate. The fence rattled a welcome home. Ms. Harris set the rules. 5-minute warm-up. Mobility. Short runs. Stationary shooting first. I'm the ref, I call every foul. You ain't got no whistle, Coach teased. My voice is the whistle, she said, and somehow everyone believed her. They started with dynamics, leg swings, ankle rolls, quad stretches that made his scar hum. Jay breathed through the old ache like an old song he didn't want to skip. Then came the first jog from baseline to free throw line. His footfall sounded different on concrete than on clinic floors. He expected pain to bark, it only cleared its throat. He went again, a little farther. Ball, Coach said, tossing him a well-loved Spalding. It settled into Jay's palm like it recognized him. The grooves fit his fingers the way a verse fits a mouth that's said it 1,000 times. Stationary, elbow, Ms. Harris reminded. Jay stepped to his favorite spot, right elbow, 15 feet from the rim, the place where muscle memory built a small house. He dribbled twice. Bend his knees. Elbow in. Breath. Release. The ball spun up, not fast, not tentative, just true. It kissed backboard and slid through. The chain net whispered shhh like it used to. Jay exhaled a laugh that sounded like disbelief and relief, shaking hands. One doesn't mean you back, Coach said, grin wide. Two might. Jay lifted again. In. 2. 3. He heard Carter's voice in the ambulance, goofy and sacred. The shot fell. A thud of approval went around the fence. Mr. Reeves grunted, that's rent money. The kids stopped their chaos to watch. A little boy in a Spider-Man tee held his ball under his arm and stared with the open-mouthed awe only 8-year-olds get to wear without apology. You that boy that got shot? He asked before anyone could shush him. Jay didn't flinch. I'm the boy who healed, he said, steady. Ms. Harris hid a smile. 2 more, then rest. He took 2 more. Swish. Back iron, drop. On the 4th, his leg twinged, not sharp, just a reminder that scars are truth-tellers. He handed the ball to the Spider-Man kid. Your turn, shorty. Elbow in. The boy mimicked Jay's form with hilarious seriousness. The ball clanged. Jay clapped anyway. Shooters keep shooting. Reps, Coach said. Life's reps. The older boys drifted over, new faces, familiar edges. A couple he recognized from before the night on Greeley. No Malik. No Trig. The absence stood beside the rusted pole like a ghost that didn't know how to leave. Half-court 3-on-3, one of them asked Coach, eyes flicking to Jay's leg, then away, not sure what was respectful. Not today, Ms. Harris said before Coach could answer. But we can run a passing drill. No defense. No contact. Keep him honest. They formed a loose triangle, Coach, Jay, one teenager in a faded AAU jersey. The ball whipped around shoulders and back, no dribbling, just catch and pop, catch and pop. The rhythm found Jay the way old songs do. The court gave him back a piece of himself he hadn't known was missing until it slid into place like a puzzle finding its corner. On the bench, Denise filmed a little, then stopped because some moments are too holy for screens. She watched her son not just move, but belong. Tears collected, but she didn't let them fall. She saved them for another room. Kids gathered like iron filings to a magnet. Someone started a count, 1, 2, 3, every make bouncing the number higher until a miss reset it and laughter eased the pressure. They weren't celebrating perfection, they were celebrating persistence. Ms. Harris checked her watch. 2 more minutes. 2 minutes is a lifetime, Coach said. Ask any point guard with the ball in a lead. Jay felt the truth of that in his bones. Time stretched in these final reps, he stepped back 1 half step, nothing dramatic, just curious, and lifted. The ball floated longer, dropped softer. His leg answered with a clear, no nonsense, that's enough. He nodded to Ms. Harris. Hear you. Good, she said, approval tucked in the corner of her mouth. He walked to the sideline and sat. The world didn't tilt. The sky didn't dim. He just rested. That felt like growth too. Spider-Man kid plopped beside him. You gonna play for the school again? Maybe, Jay said. If my coach clears me. If my body says okay. But either way, I'ma be out here. Why? Jay looked at the cracked free throw line, the bent rim, the chain links that had heard more curses and prayers than any church pew on the block. Because some courts are more than courts, he said. They're classrooms. Hospitals. Sanctuaries. Spider-Man squinted. What's that mean? It means this place helped save my life, Jay said simply. So I owe it some time. Across the way, the older boys had started a light game, half speed, full laughter. A pass sailed wild toward the fence. Jay stood without thinking, snagged it one-handed, and flipped it back smooth. The move felt like a paragraph he'd been practicing in his sleep. Nice, the AAU kid called. Jay lifted a hand in thanks and sat again. His leg buzzed, not danger, just volume. He rubbed the scar, not to erase it, but almost to say I see you. Denise joined him on the bench. She handed him water. How's the pain scale? 5, he said. Good 5. Good 5, she repeated, as if cataloging a new species. You looked like yourself. I feel like a new version of myself who knows the old one. That's wise, she said, meaning it. Mr. Reeves waddled over, spit a sunflower seed shell-like punctuation, and nodded at the kids. You talked to them yet? He asked Jay. About what? About shoes and bullets, Reeves said. About why they don't trade life for lace. He squinted at the little crowd. They'll listen to you before they listen to an old man. Jay followed his gaze. The boys were everything he had been, energy wearing elbows, bravado hiding fear. I will, he said. Soon. Soon is now most days, Reeves muttered, but he patted Jay's shoulder like he trusted him anyway. Miss Harris clapped once. Cool down. Then we out. Jay walked slow to the baseline and did the tiny stretches she'd taught him, calf, quad, hamstring, lower back. He breathed. He let the air in smell like the neighborhood, grill smoke from somebody's stoop, laundry soap from an open window, a bus sighing at the corner, the court's own perfume of dust and rubber and possibility. As they packed up, a police cruiser rolled by without stopping. The driver looked over, nodded once at the cluster of kids and the adults actually watching them, then kept moving. No siren. No spotlight. Just a car in a city that, for this minute, wasn't hunting anybody. At the gate, Jay turned back. The hoop framed the sky like a promise. He raised his hand, not quite a wave, not quite a salute, then dropped it and followed his people toward home. On the walk, Denise broke the quiet. You know you don't have to prove anything, right? I know, he said. Today wasn't proof. It was thanks. For what? For inches, he said. She smiled, that small, tired, unstoppable smile that had held their house together for years. Then we keep counting M. They crossed at Greeley. Jay glanced down the block where the night had tried to memorize his blood. The sidewalk had no stain he could see, rain and time had done their janitor work. But in his chest, a mark remained, not for shame, not for fear, just a reminder to carry himself like a survivor with a job to do. The job would get clearer. For now, he had done the first assignment, put both feet back on the court, touch the ball, breathe, release, stop before ego talked louder than wisdom. If purpose was a staircase, he had stepped onto it. Behind them, the chain net whispered in the wind. The city breathed back. Chapter 9, Testimony to the Youth. The church basement smelled like fried chicken, waxed floors, and history. Folding chairs lined up in crooked rows. A battered podium stood front and center, flanked by 2 portable speakers that buzzed if you tapped the mic wrong. On the back wall, a banner read Youth Night, Finding Your Purpose in bold letters someone had cut out from neon poster board. Jamal J. Richardson sat in the second row, bouncing his leg out of habit until the scar reminded him to slow down. Denise sat beside him, whispering encouragements like he was about to take the SATs instead of a microphone. Around the room, kids his age or younger slouched in hoodies, scrolled on phones, or whispered jokes that barely covered nerves. Some wore the same restless hunger Jay had once carried. A few wore Jordans he recognized instantly. Pastor Graham opened the night with a prayer and a short word, but everyone knew the main draw wasn't the pastor tonight. It was Jay. The kid who got shot on Greeley. The one who walked again. God put testimonies in our neighborhood, Not just in the Bible, Pastor said, eyes sweeping the room. And tonight, you get to hear one. He nodded toward Jay. Come on up, son. Jay's stomach clenched, but his feet obeyed. He walked to the podium, each step echoing louder than it should have. When he gripped the sides, his hands felt too big. He cleared his throat. The mic squealed once, then settled. Hey, he started. A few kids chuckled. Yeah, I'm nervous. Don't laugh too hard, I know y'all would be too. That cracked the first layer of ice. He took a breath, like Miss Harris always drilled. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Pain taught him that. Rehab made him practice it. Purpose demanded it now. My name's Jamal, but most people call me Jay. Couple months ago, I almost died over some shoes. Heads lifted. Phones lowered. Silence spread like ink. I'd saved all summer for those Jordans. Bodega shifts, mowing grass, sweeping up at the barber shop. When I finally laced them up, I thought it meant something. Thought it said I was leveling up. Thought it meant people would respect me more. But all it really did was put a target on me. He paused. No need to dramatize, truth carried enough weight. 2 dudes I used to hoop with ran up on me. I tried to hand him over. One had a gun. He flinched. Pulled the trigger. He tapped his thigh lightly. Bullet landed here. Inches from my artery. Inches from my funeral. Doctor said if it moved even a little, my mama would have been burying me instead of feeding me hospital jello. A murmur rolled through the room. Jay let it. I ain't gonna lie. I was angry. Angry at them. Angry at God. Angry at myself for thinking sneakers made me somebody. But then something hit me harder than that bullet. I was still here. I was given inches, and a second chance. He picked up the basketball he'd brought, held it chest high. Y'all know what Coach Vern used to drill me on? Form. Elbow in. Breath. Release. It's all inches. Miss left, miss right, sometimes the ball decides, sometimes the rim does. Life's the same. Inches matter. Inches decided I'm standing here instead of y'all wearing t-shirts with my face on it. A hush fell. He scanned the crowd, landed on a boy in the front row wearing fresh Jordans, legs sprawled wide like he dared anyone to check him. Jay pointed gently. Don't get me wrong, ain't nothing wrong with shoes. I still love mine. But don't trade life for lace. You hear me? Don't let pride write your obituary. The boy shifted, looked down at his sneakers, then back at Jay with something softer in his eyes. Jay continued. When I was in rehab, Miss Harris told me pain makes you hold your breath. But breathing through it makes you stronger. Same with life. Pain gone come, bullets, betrayals, bills. Don't hold your breath and drown in it. Breathe through it. Push through it. Find your reason to keep stepping. He looked toward Denise, who was quietly crying but smiling anyway. My mama prayed me through nights I didn't even know I was living. That woman wouldn't let go of my hand even when the doctors told her to wait outside. She believed when I couldn't. Sometimes God lends you his strength through somebody else. Don't ignore that. Someone in the back whispered, facts, just loud enough for the room to laugh nervously. Jay smiled. Facts, yeah. Realest facts I know. He leaned closer to the mic. Some of y'all already walking grilly every night, hoping trouble don't call your name. Some of y'all already thinking money or sneakers or rep gon save you. I'm here to tell you, none of that kept me alive. God did. God in inches. The silence now wasn't restless. It was listening. Even the phones were down. Jay bounced the ball once. The hollow echo filled the basement. So here's my challenge. Next time you lace up, remember, your life's worth more than what's on your feet. Remember, inches matter. And remember, you don't need to be the next victim to be the next testimony. He let the ball rest on the podium, wiped his palms on his jeans, and finished, "That's my story. From savage to saved. Thank you." The room erupted in claps, whistles, even a few amens. Pastor Graham stepped forward and wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "This young man just preached a whole sermon without a seminary degree," he said, grinning. The kids laughed, but not dismissively. They were looking at Jay differently now, like someone who'd walked where they were walking but made it back with scars and a story. When the night ended, kids lined up to dap him up. Spider-Man T. Kid from the court was there, eyes wide, asking, "Can I be like you?" Jay bent, looked him dead in the eye. "Be better than me," he said. "Don't wait for inches to wake you up." The boy nodded solemn like he'd been knighted. On the way home, Denise nudged him. "You know what you just did? Talk too much?" Jay teased. "You preached without saying preacher," she said. "That's a calling, baby." Jay leaned his head against the bus window, city lights streaking past. He didn't know about calling yet. But he knew about inches. And for the first time, he knew how to measure them. Chapter 10, Freedom Walk. The city looked different when you walked it with purpose. Jamal J. Richardson noticed it on a Sunday afternoon, the kind with sunshine that made brick glow and laundry lines look like flags. Denise had pressed a polo into his hands that morning and said, "Look like the man you becoming," and he had. The scar on his thigh tugged when he took long strides, not as a warning anymore, but as a nudge, "Remember." He cut across the park on his way to the court, Bible tucked beneath his arm like the old Spalding he used to carry everywhere. Kids hollered at the rim, a grill smoked near the benches, somewhere a speaker argued with a choir from a storefront church and both sounded right. People saw him and lifted a hand. He lifted his back. Not famous, not forgotten, seen. Jay. Spider-Man T, now too small on the boy, sprinted over. "We running runs. You playing?" "Not full tilt," Jay said, laughing. "Ms. Harris would bench me for life. But I'll pass y'all open." They ran a light game. No hard screens, no bodies crashing, just ball moving like water and kids learning that selfishness is bad offense. Jay's passes hit hands like he'd never left. When the score settled and the teens sprawled across the sideline sucking air, Ms. Harris appeared at the gate, arms folded, eyebrow up. "You didn't tell me you put me on cardio duty today," she said. "It was zone," Jay grinned. "Low impact." She rolled her eyes. "Zone is still defense." Denise arrived a beat later with a cooler and paper plates, Mr. Reed shuffling behind her with sunflower seeds like he owned stock. Coach Vern pulled up a lawn chair with the authority of a man who'd driven 3 routes and still had coaching left in the tank. "Testimony day?" he asked, eyes twinkling. "Every day," Denise said, and handed him a plate. They made a picnic of it, a neighborhood communion, hot dogs and stories, coleslaw and laughter. When the food quieted, Pastor Graham strolled through the chain link like he'd been invited by the wind. "I only came for the coleslaw," he said, then winked at Jay. "And to check on my young preacher." "I'm not," Jay started. "There yet," Pastor finished gently. "But you're on the road." Jay looked at the kids, at the cracked paint and the bent rim and the square of sky the chain links framed. He cleared his throat. "Y'all mind if I say something?" Phones slipped into pockets. Heads turned. "I used to think freedom was getting whatever I wanted. Shoes. Respect. No curfew. But that freedom put me on a sidewalk bleeding. Now I think freedom is knowing who you are and walking that, scar and all." He tapped his thigh. "This ain't weakness. It's a receipt. I paid for a lesson I'm not letting go of." He told them about inches again, and seconds, and breath. He told them that God didn't promise a life without bullets, but he did promise his presence and purpose through whatever tried to break you. He told them that singleness of purpose is harder than swagger, and that forgiveness is heavier than a chain around your neck but easier on your spine. When he finished, no one clapped. Not because it fell flat, but because clapping felt small. A few boys looked at their shoes like the leather might answer back. Spider-Man, now Avengers T, whispered, "I ain't dying for lace," and his friends nodded like they'd signed a pact. "All right," Coach Vern barked, breaking the holiness with a grin. "Drills. 10 chest passes each. If the ball hits the ground, we start over." As the kids paired up, Pastor Graham sidled next to Jay. "You ready for tonight?" "What's tonight?" Jay asked, wiping mustard from his knuckles. "Baptism service," Pastor said casually. "Ain't no pressure, but the water's warm." Jay stared at the court. He thought about the ambulance ceiling, Dr. Bell's steady hands, Ms. Harris's whistle voice without a whistle, Avery's paper with the little rectangle, Denise's fingers locked around his in recovery. He thought about how his heart had been moving toward a yes that his mouth hadn't said out loud yet. "What if I'm not fixed?" he asked softly. Pastor's smile was kind. "Water's for people who know they can't fix themselves. God meets us wet." Jay's laugh came out a cough. He nodded. "Then, yeah. I think I'm ready." Evening fell like a soft curtain. The church lights warmed the sanctuary, the choir hummed scales that sounded like staircases to heaven. Denise sat front row, hands clasped, the same way she'd held him in the ambulance with faith that didn't ask permission. Mr. Reeves posted near the aisle like security and proud uncle both. Ms. Harris and Coach filled a pew with a few kids from the court who'd followed just to see what courage looked like in a suit. Jay stood with 2 other people in white robes behind the baptismal, an older woman with arthritic hands, a teenage girl with a nose ring and eyes like iron. Pastor Graham stepped into the water first, trousers rolled, smile wide. "Jamal," he said, voice carrying gentle across the room. "Have you decided to trust Jesus with your life?" Jay swallowed. The sanctuary held its breath. He thought of Greeley's slice of sky, of inches and seconds, of breath on count. He heard Chaplain Avery, "Purpose doesn't wait until you got no limp. Sometimes it starts with one." "Yes," Jay said. "Strong, not loud." "True." Pastor's hands guided him down, back, until water closed over his ears and the world became a soundless blue. In that instant, the sidewalk vanished, the siren quieted, the bullet lost its name. He came up gasping, laughing, blinking water from his lashes. The room erupted, hallelujahs and claps, Denise's cry cutting through like a trumpet. He stood dripping, robe heavy, heart light. He looked at his mother and mouthed, "We made it." She shook her head and mouthed back, "God did." After the service, kids crowded him with questions about baptism and ball and both. He answered what he could and admitted what he couldn't. Pastor pressed a towel into his hands and a small, one Bible into the other, the chaplain's kind, corners softened by use. "It's yours," Pastor said. "Mark it up. Make it a map." They spilled into the night. The block smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. Jay walked slow, Denise's arm hooked in his, Mr. Reeves a few paces ahead lecturing a teenager about pulling his pants up, Coach arguing with Ms. Harris about who made the best potato salad. Laughter carried. A cop car rolled by, windows down, the officer lifted 2 fingers, Jay returned the peace sign without flinching. At the corner of Greeley, he stopped. The sidewalk didn't hold him the way it used to. He held it. He stepped to the spot where his life had almost ended and put his palm down flat on the concrete. Cool. Solid. Temporary, like all the places we think are final. "Let's go, baby," Denise said, voice soft. "Yeah," he answered, standing. "Let's go." They walked home not fast, not slow, measured. The scar tugged, but the tug felt like a leash held by love. At his building, kids leaned on railings, elders rocked on plastic chairs, somebody's radio found an old gospel song that fit the street like a glove. Jay turned to the sky, the slice above his roof bigger than Greeley's, and breathed deep. The air tasted like tomorrow. He lifted the Bible, not as a trophy, but as a compass. He didn't have a 5-year plan. He had today, and a story, and a block full of inches that needed counting. He took a step forward. Freedom, it turned out, wasn't a finish line. It was a walk you kept walking. Folded hands closing prayer. Father God, thank you for sparing my life when inches could have taken it. Thank you for every breath, every step, every hand you sent, my mama, the EMTs, the surgeon, the chaplain, my coaches, my neighbors. Cover every kid on blocks like mine where sneakers and pride try to trade places with purpose. Protect them from bullets and from the lies that say their worth is on their feet instead of in their soul. Give us courage to forgive, strength to heal, and wisdom to lead. Make our scars into testimonies and our courts into sanctuaries. In Jesus' name, amen. From Savage to Saved. If you believe God still turns inches into purpose, type amen in the comments and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to keep walking.